The large classroom buzzed with quiet chatter as students found their seats. Professor Zixtal stood at the front, their crystal-like skin shifting from blue to purple as they prepared for the day's lecture. The alien professor was tall and thin, with 4 arms that moved like liquid as they arranged their teaching materials. Their species came from a peaceful world where the most dangerous creature was something like Earth's house cat. Today was special. Professor Zixtal had spent months getting permission to bring these samples to class. The security team had insisted on triple containment fields. The university's safety board had made every student sign 12 different forms. Even the cleaning crew had been warned to stay away from this room for the next week. Sarah Chun sat in the back row, trying not to draw attention to herself. She was the only human in the advanced xenobiology class. Actually, she was the only human at the entire Galactic University. The school had accepted her as part of a new exchange program, though many professors seemed nervous about having her there. Some had whispered that Earth was too primitive and dangerous for their students to learn about safely. The other students were fascinating to watch. There were the Zelkari with their purple tentacles, the tall gray Vorthek with their huge eyes, and the small furry Quillians who looked like walking teddy bears. They all seemed excited but also scared about today's lesson. Sarah noticed several students had moved their chairs further back from the front of the room. Professor Zixtal cleared their throat, which sounded like wind chimes ringing. Students, today we will examine the most lethal biological weapons known to science. These samples represent millions of years of evolutionary warfare. Even in their current contained state, they could theoretically eliminate entire populations. A thick glass case sat on the professor's desk, surrounded by humming energy fields. Inside were several small vials filled with different colored liquids. Each vial had multiple warning labels written in 20 different alien languages. The case itself was connected to an emergency system that would flood the room with neutralizing agents if anything went wrong. Our first specimen comes from a creature called the box jellyfish, Professor Zixtal said, pointing to a clear vial. This organism exists in the death world known as Earth. Its venom contains toxins so powerful that a single drop could kill 50 Galactic Alliance citizens. The pain it causes is described as worse than being dissolved in acid. The students gasped. Several Quillians whimpered and hugged each other. Sarah found this reaction strange, but stayed quiet. She remembered the box jellyfish from childhood trips to the beach in Australia. Her family had always been careful around them. But they were just another sea creature to watch out for, like sharks or strong currents. Next, we have venom from the blue-ringed octopus, the professor continued, indicating a blue-tinted vial. This small creature carries enough poison to kill 26 adult Vorthik within minutes. There is no known cure for its bite. The victim remains conscious as their nervous system shuts down completely. A Vorthik student made a choking sound and raised one of their long arms. Professor, how do creatures like this evolve? What could be so threatening that they need such powerful defenses? Professor Zixtal's skin turned deep purple, which Sarah had learned meant they were thinking hard. That is an excellent question. Earth's ecosystem is unlike anything we have studied. The evolutionary pressure there must be extraordinary. Every creature seems designed to kill or avoid being killed in the most efficient way possible. The professor moved to the third vial, which contained a yellowish liquid. This sample comes from what humans call the inland taipan snake. Its venom is so concentrated that one bite contains enough poison to kill 100 adult Kepler-442 natives. The toxin attacks the nervous system, the blood, and the muscles all at once. Death occurs within hours, preceded by complete system failure. Sarah shifted in her seat, remembering her grandfather's stories about catching snakes for his research. He had always spoken about them with respect, not fear. Grandpa Joe had even been bitten once by a venomous snake and lived to tell about it. The family always joked that he was too stubborn to die. Finally, Professor Zixtal said, their voice dropping to almost a whisper, "We have venom from the cone snail. This tiny mollusk produces the most complex poison known to science. It contains over 100 different toxins, each designed to attack a different part of the victim's body. Amount smaller than a grain of sand could kill 30 Zelkari instantly." The Zelkari students turned pale green, their tentacles wrapping around themselves protectively. One of them asked, "Professor, how do scientists on Earth study these creatures? Do they use robots from far away?" "Actually," Professor Zixtal said, "humans have been known to handle these creatures directly, though they use extreme safety measures that would make our own protocols seem casual. They have developed antidotes for some of these toxins, though the treatments are almost as dangerous as the venoms themselves." Sarah looked around the classroom. Every student looked terrified. Some were taking notes with shaking hands. Others looked like they might be sick. She wondered if she was missing something. These were dangerous creatures, sure, but they were just animals doing what animals did to survive. Professor Zixtal began explaining the safety procedures. They used to bring these samples to class. The venom had been diluted to safe levels, then diluted again, then placed in neutralizing solutions. Each vial contained maybe 1/1,000,000th of the original strength. Even so, they were still considered extremely dangerous. The beauty of these specimens, the professor continued, lies not in their lethality, but in their precision. Each toxin has evolved to target specific biological systems with incredible efficiency. They represent the ultimate achievement of biological warfare. As the professor spoke about molecular structures and evolutionary pressure, Sarah found her mind wandering. She thought about the tide pool she had explored as a child, full of creatures that everyone here would probably consider nightmarish. She remembered camping trips where her family had warned her about various plants and animals, but they had never seemed that scary. They were just part of nature. The lecture continued with detailed explanations of how each venom worked at the cellular level. Professor Zixtal described the precise way each toxin broke down different biological systems. The other students listened with a mixture of fascination and horror, taking careful notes about the most effective ways these poisons could kill. Sarah raised her hand. Professor Zixtal looked up from their notes, their crystal skin shifting to a lighter blue as they noticed the human student's raised hand. The professor had been hoping to get through the entire lecture without the human asking questions. Earth creatures were disturbing enough without having to discuss them with someone who actually lived among them. "Yes, Miss Chun," Professor Zixtal said carefully. "Do you have a question about the molecular structure of these toxins?" Sarah smiled politely. She had been trying hard to be a good student since arriving at the university. Many of the professors seemed nervous around her, and she wanted to prove that humans could fit in well with galactic society. "I was just wondering, Professor, why are these samples so weakened? Are they from baby animals or something?" The classroom fell completely silent. Professor Zixtal's skin flickered through several colors rapidly, which their species did when they were confused or stressed. They looked down at their samples, then back at Sarah, then at the samples again. "I'm sorry, Miss Chun, but I don't understand your question. These samples are not weakened. They represent full-strength venom from adult specimens." Sarah looked puzzled. She glanced around the room at the other students, who were all staring at her with wide eyes. "But, Professor, you said they were diluted to safe levels, then diluted again, then put in neutralizing solutions. That must make them thousands of times weaker than the original venom, right?" Professor Zixtal's forearms began moving in small, nervous circles. This was not a question they had expected. "Miss Chun, these samples had to be diluted for safety reasons. Even in their current state, they're still considered extremely dangerous. The original, undiluted venom would be far too hazardous to bring into a classroom setting. Oh, Sarah said, nodding. So where are the really dangerous samples? Like from the mature specimens at full strength? Are those kept in a special lab somewhere? The professor's skin turned a deep red color that their species displayed when they were extremely alarmed. Around the room, other students began whispering to each other in their native languages. Some of the Quillians had started making small, distressed sounds. Miss Chun, Professor Zixtal said slowly, I want to make sure I understand your question correctly. Are you asking about undiluted, full-strength venom from these creatures? Well, yes, Sarah said. I mean, if these are supposed to be the deadliest toxins in known space, shouldn't we be studying the real thing? These diluted samples can't really show us how the venom actually works, can they? Professor Zixtal set down their teaching tablet with shaking hands. They had studied Earth creatures for years, but always from a safe, academic distance. The idea that someone would want to work with undiluted versions of these toxins was deeply disturbing. Miss Chun, the undiluted venom from any of these creatures would be instantly fatal to every species in this room. We could not safely contain such substances in a university setting. Sarah tilted her head, looking genuinely confused. But how do the researchers on Earth study them? I mean, someone has to collect the venom and analyze it, right? My grandfather always said, you can't understand an animal if you don't understand all its parts. Your grandfather? Professor Zixtal asked weakly. He was a herpetologist, Sarah explained cheerfully. He studied reptiles and amphibians. He worked with venomous snakes his whole career. Got bitten a few times too, but the antivenom usually worked pretty well. The room erupted in gasps and frightened chatter. A Vorthic student stood up so quickly they knocked over their chair. You mean humans regularly expose themselves to these toxins? Well, not regularly, Sarah said, trying to calm everyone down. I mean, researchers are always careful. But accidents happen. And some people get stung or bitten by wild animals. It's not that uncommon. Professor Zixtal's skin was now cycling through colors so rapidly it was almost strobing. They pressed a button on their desk that sent an emergency signal to the university's xenobiology department. This conversation was moving far outside their area of expertise. Miss Chun, the professor said carefully, when you say not that uncommon, could you be more specific? How often do humans come into contact with these toxins? Sarah thought for a moment. Well, in Australia where I grew up, people get stung by box jellyfish every year. Not a lot of people, maybe a few dozen. And most of them survive if they get medical help quickly. Blue-ringed octopus bites are really rare, but they happen. Snake bites are more common, especially in rural areas. And they survive these encounters? Professor Zixtal asked in a voice barely above a whisper. Usually, yeah, Sarah said. I got stung by a box jellyfish when I was 12. It really hurt, and I had to go to the hospital, but I was fine after a day or two. My friend Jake got stung by one when we were 16 and just used some vinegar we had at the beach house. He didn't even go to the doctor. Every student in the room was now staring at Sarah as if she had just claimed to breathe vacuum and eat stars for breakfast. Professor Zixtal's hands trembled as they made notes on their tablet. Miss Chun, the professor said very slowly, are you telling me that you have personally been exposed to undiluted box jellyfish venom and survived? Well, yes, Sarah said. But it's not really that big a deal. People get stung by jellyfish all the time. There are warning signs on most beaches about them. A Zelkari student's tentacles curled up in fear. Warning signs? You mean humans go swimming in waters where these creatures live? Sure, Sarah said. You just have to be careful and know what to look out for. The beaches usually have vinegar stations in case someone gets stung. And lifeguards are trained in first aid. Professor Zixtel realized they needed help. They sent another emergency message, this time to the university's top xenobiology experts and the department head. This was no longer just an unusual question from a student. This was a fundamental challenge to everything they thought they knew about the toxicity scale in the galaxy. Miss Chun, Professor Zixtel said, "I think we need to pause today's lecture. I would very much like to schedule a meeting with you and some of my colleagues to discuss these Earth creatures in more detail." Sarah looked concerned. "Did I say something wrong? I didn't mean to disrupt the class." No, the professor assured her quickly, though their skin was still flashing warning colors. "You have been very helpful. Perhaps too helpful." As the other students filed out of the room, whispering excitedly to each other, Professor Zixtel stared at the contained venom samples on their desk. These substances, diluted to what they thought were barely detectable levels, were apparently something humans encountered in their daily lives. The professor's worldview was beginning to crack. If humans could survive direct exposure to these toxins, what did that say about Earth as a planet? What kind of world produced creatures that could shrug off substances that would wipe out entire space stations? Sarah gathered her books, still looking worried about disrupting the class. She had no idea that her simple question had just started a revolution in galactic xenobiology. Professor Zixtel watched her leave and immediately began composing an urgent message to every major research institution in the galaxy. The humans, it seemed, were far more dangerous than anyone had realized. Dr. Morvac arrived at Professor Zixtel's office within an hour of receiving the emergency message. The head of the xenobiology department was a massive Vorthak, nearly 3 meters tall with gray skin and 6 arms. Morvac had seen everything in 40 years of studying alien life forms, but they had never looked as disturbed as they did right now. "Show me the recordings," Dr. Morvac said without greeting. Settling into the reinforced chair designed for their species, Professor Zixtel played back the classroom session, focusing on Sarah's questions and answers. As the recording progressed, Dr. Morvac's large eyes grew wider and their skin turned a sickly pale gray color. "She survived direct exposure to box jellyfish venom," Dr. Morvac whispered. "A human child survived what would kill dozens of our people." "That's not even the worst part," Professor Zixtel said, their crystal skin flickering nervous colors. "I did some research after class. According to the human medical databases, box jellyfish stings happen regularly on Earth. They have entire medical protocols for treating them. It's considered a routine emergency." Dr. Morvac's hands trembled as they pulled up their own research files. "I've been looking into human biology since you sent your message. Morvac, their physiology is terrifying. Their liver processes toxins that would shut down our entire nervous systems. Their kidneys filter out substances that would crystal in our blood and kill us instantly." "There's more," Professor Zixtel said grimly. "I contacted the human medical database through the university's research network. I asked about cone snail envenomation. Do you know what they told me?" Dr. Morvac shook their massive head. "They said there have been 30 documented cases in the last 50 Earth years. 7 of them survived." 7, Morvac. Humans survived direct exposure to cone snail venom. Not diluted venom. Not treated venom. Fresh, full-strength cone snail venom that should have killed them in seconds. Dr. Morvac stood up and began pacing, which was a sign of extreme distress in their species. "This doesn't make sense. Earth can't be that hostile. No planet could evolve intelligent life if it were truly that dangerous." "I thought the same thing," Professor Zixtel said. "So I dug deeper. I looked at what humans consider normal environmental hazards." They pulled up a holographic display showing Earth's wildlife. "Dr. Morvac, they live alongside creatures that would be classified as bioweapons by Galactic Council standards. The display showed images of various earth animals: black mamba snakes, poison dart frogs, spiders, scorpions, and plants covered with thorns and toxic sap. Their children play in areas where these creatures live, Professor Zixtel continued. They have nature camps where young humans are deliberately exposed to what we would consider combat environments. They call it character building. Dr. Morvac stopped pacing and stared at the images. What about their technology? Surely they use advanced protective equipment to survive in such conditions? Professor Zixtel's skin turned dark red. Morvac, you're not going to believe this. I looked up their protective protocols for handling venomous creatures. For many species, they use gloves. Fabric gloves. Sometimes they use tools like sticks or hooks. That's it. That's impossible. I have video recordings from their research facilities. Humans handling inland taipans with minimal protection. Humans working directly with black widow spiders. Humans collecting venom from cone snails using basic laboratory equipment that wouldn't meet safety standards for handling our mildest pathogens. Dr. Morvac sat down heavily. There must be some mistake. No species could survive direct exposure to these toxins. Professor Zixtel activated another display. I thought so too. So I contacted Sarah Chun directly and asked her to participate in a detailed interview about human toxin exposure. The results are disturbing. The recording showed Sarah sitting comfortably in the university's medical interview room. She looked relaxed and friendly, completely unaware that her answers were fundamentally changing galactic understanding of biological hazards. Could you tell us about other times you've encountered venomous creatures? Professor Zixtal's recorded voice asked. Oh, sure, Sarah said cheerfully. When I was 8, I got bitten by a spider. Mom thought it might be a redback, so she took me to the doctor, but it turned out to be nothing serious. When I was 14, I accidentally stepped on a blue-ringed octopus in a tide pool. That was scary because everyone knows they're dangerous, but it didn't actually bite me. Dr. Morvac made a choking sound. She stepped on a blue-ringed octopus? It gets worse, Professor Zixtel said. Keep listening. My brother got stung by a stonefish once while we were snorkeling, Sarah continued. He was in a lot of pain, but the paramedics gave him some kind of injection and he was fine within a few hours. Oh, and my cousin works as a snake handler at a wildlife park. He's been bitten 3 times by venomous snakes, but he always gets the antivenom quickly, so it's not really dangerous. Dr. Morvac's skin had turned completely white. They have antivenom. They have developed antidotes for these substances. That's not even the strangest part, Professor Zixtel said. I asked her about other substances humans are exposed to. Morvac, they consume toxins recreationally. What do you mean? Professor Zixtel pulled up another recording. Tell us about human dietary habits, their recorded voice said. Well, we eat lots of different things, Sarah said. Spicy food is really popular. Chili peppers contain capsaicin, which is technically a neurotoxin, but most people love the sensation. Some peppers are so hot they can cause chemical burns, but people eat them as a challenge. Dr. Morvac stood up again, swaying slightly. They intentionally consume neurotoxins for entertainment. Coffee is really common too, Sarah continued. Caffeine is a psychoactive stimulant. Most adults drink it daily. Some people drink enough to cause heart palpitations, but they just say they need to cut back and keep drinking it. And alcohol, Professor Zixtel added. Ethanol, a substance that would cause immediate liver failure in most galactic species. Humans drink it socially. They're poisoning themselves for fun, Dr. Morvac whispered. I also asked about their natural environment, Professor Zixtel said. Morvac, they live in atmospheric conditions that would be lethal to us. The oxygen concentration alone would cause oxidative damage to our tissues. Their water supplies contain minerals that would crystallize in our blood. Their soil is full of bacteria and fungi that would cause systemic infections. Dr. Morvak collapsed back into their chair. How is this possible? How did they evolve to survive in such conditions? I think, Professor Zixtel said slowly, we've been approaching this wrong. We've been thinking of Earth as a planet that happened to develop dangerous life forms. But what if it's the opposite? What if Earth is so fundamentally hostile that everything that survives there has to be incredibly resilient? You mean humans aren't just resistant to these specific toxins? I mean, humans might be resistant to almost everything. Their immune systems, their metabolic processes, their cellular repair mechanisms. Everything about their biology suggests they evolved in an environment where constant toxic exposure was normal. Dr. Morvak was quiet for a long moment. If that's true, then humans aren't just another species joining the galactic community. They're walking biological weapons platforms that don't even realize how dangerous they are. Professor Zixtal nodded grimly. And Sarah Chun is just a graduate student. She's not even a soldier or a researcher who works with dangerous materials. She's an ordinary human who thinks surviving box jellyfish stings is normal childhood experience. We need to alert the Galactic Council, Dr. Morvak said. This changes everything we know about planetary hazard classifications. Already done, Professor Zixtal said. I sent a preliminary report this morning. But Morvak, there's something else. I asked Sarah if she knew any humans who work with more dangerous substances. Dr. Morvak's eyes widened. More dangerous than this? She mentioned something called a military unit. Apparently, some humans are trained specifically to survive in hostile environments and handle dangerous materials. She said they're called soldiers and that they can operate in conditions that would kill most life forms. Dr. Morvak's skin turned so pale it was almost transparent. There are humans specifically trained to be even more resilient than the normal ones. Professor Zixtal's skin shifted to the deepest red their species could produce. Morvak, I think we need to completely reevaluate our understanding of what makes a species dangerous. The emergency session of the Galactic University Xenobiology Council took place in the highest security conference room on campus. Representatives from 12 different species sat around the curved table, their various forms of alien physiology all displaying signs of extreme stress. Dr. Morvak stood at the head of the table, operating a holographic display that showed detailed charts of human biological data. The information had been gathered over 3 days of intensive research, and every new discovery had been more disturbing than the last. Ladies, gentlemen, and honored colleagues, Dr. Morvak began. What we have learned about human biology in the past 72 hours requires us to fundamentally reconsider our understanding of planetary hazard classification and species resilience. A thin, green-skinned Zelkari researcher named Dr. Quillex raised one of her tentacles. Dr. Morvak, are we certain this data is accurate? Some of these claims seem impossible. I understand your skepticism, Dr. Morvak replied. We have triple-checked everything through multiple independent sources. The human medical databases, scientific journals, and direct interviews all confirm these findings. Dr. Morvak activated the first display. Let's start with what we thought we knew. We believed the venom samples, Professor Zixtal showed in class, represented the most lethal biological substances in known space. We now know that humans encounter these substances regularly and have developed medical protocols for treating exposure. The display showed statistics that made several council members gasp. Box jellyfish stings averaged 50 cases per Earth year with a 70% survival rate. Snakebite incidents numbered in the thousands annually across human populations. Most shocking of all, spider bites were so common that humans had categorized them from mild irritation to medical emergency, with the vast majority being treated at home with basic first AID, Dr. Quillix's skin turned pale green. They treat venomous bites with basic first aid? That's just the beginning, Dr. Morvik said grimly. Dr. Vash, could you present your findings about human dietary habits? Dr. Vash was a small, furry Quillian who specialized in biochemistry. Her usual cheerful demeanor was completely gone as she activated her own display. Colleagues, humans regularly consume substances that will be classified as biological weapons by our standards. The display showed a list that made the entire council fall silent. Capsaicin, consumed daily by billions of humans in quantities that would cause severe tissue damage to other species. Caffeine, a powerful stimulant that humans ingested multiple times per day. Alcohol, a cellular toxin that humans consume socially in quantities that would cause immediate liver failure in most galactic species. But wait, Dr. Vash continued, her voice shaking slightly. There's more. They consume something called chocolate, which contains theobromine, a substance that would be lethal to most of our species. They eat plants from the nightshade family that contain natural pesticides. They use spices that are literally plant defense mechanisms designed to prevent consumption. A massive, rock-like Kepler-442 representative named Dr. Stoneheart spoke up. Are you saying humans have evolved to process toxins that would kill us? Not just process them, Dr. Vash said. They seek them out. They have entire industries built around producing more potent versions of these substances. They have competitions to see who can consume the most dangerous varieties. Professor Zixtel activated another display. Dr. Thornfield has been researching human environmental conditions. The results are equally disturbing. Dr. Thornfield was a tall insect-like researcher from the hive worlds. Their compound eyes reflected the display lights as they spoke in their clicking language, which was translated by the room's computers. Human atmospheric requirements alone would be lethal to most species present, the translation said. 21% oxygen concentration would cause severe oxidative stress in Zelkari, Quillian, and Vorthic physiology. Their water supplies contain mineral concentrations that would cause kidney crystallization in 7 of our 12 species. The display showed Earth's environmental conditions compared to standard galactic habitability requirements. Earth failed every single safety standard by enormous margins. The bacterial load in human environments is particularly shocking, Dr. Thornfield continued. They live in symbiotic relationships with trillions of microorganisms that would cause systemic infections in other species. They call this their microbiome and consider it essential for health. Dr. Morvik took over the presentation again. Now we come to the most disturbing discoveries. Dr. Windcaller has been researching human recreational activities. Dr. Windcaller was an energy being from the gas giant clouds, appearing as a shifting pattern of lights in a containment field. Their voice came through harmonic resonators. Humans intentionally expose themselves to environmental hazards for entertainment, Dr. Windcaller's translated voice said. They climb mountains in atmospheric conditions too thin to support most life. They swim in waters filled with predatory creatures that could kill them. They throw themselves from great heights using primitive fabric devices to slow their fall. The display showed videos of human extreme sports that made several council members look away. Rock climbing without safety equipment, deep-sea diving to depths that would crush most alien physiology, surfing waves that could easily kill them, and something called base jumping that looked like suicide attempts to the alien observers. They call these activities fun, Dr. Windcaller continued. They actively seek out dangerous situations that trigger their stress responses, then describe the experience as enjoyable. Some humans dedicate their entire lives to finding more dangerous activities to attempt. Dr. Stoneheart's rocky form was vibrating, which indicated extreme distress in their species. This suggests humans have evolved not just to survive hostile conditions, but to thrive in them. Their neurochemistry is apparently wired to reward dangerous behavior. That brings us to our final category, Dr. Morvik said. Military applications? We asked our human subject about trained soldiers, and the information we gathered is classified at the highest levels of galactic security. The display shifted to show redacted documents with only basic information visible. Human soldiers are apparently trained to operate in environments that would be instantly lethal to most galactic species. They can function in extreme temperatures, toxic atmospheres, and radioactive environments. They carry weapons that would be classified as planet killers by our standards, but humans treat them as standard infantry equipment. Dr. Quillick's tentacles were curled up in fear. Are you saying humans are naturally evolved biological weapons? Worse, Dr. Morvek said. We think they don't realize it. To them, surviving in conditions that would kill us is normal. They've developed their entire civilization around the assumption that everything is trying to kill them. So they've become virtually unkillable by our standards. The council sat in stunned silence for several minutes. Finally, Dr. Stoneheart spoke. What do we recommend to the Galactic Alliance? Dr. Morvek looked around the room at his colleagues. We need to completely reclassify Earth from a Class M Garden world to a Class 10 Death world. We need new safety protocols for any interaction with humans. And we need to seriously reconsider what we thought we knew about planetary evolution. What about the human student? Dr. Quillick asked. Sarah Chun? Dr. Morvik said. She's still asking if she can write her doctoral thesis on why we find Earth creatures so dangerous. She genuinely doesn't understand why we're so concerned about organisms she considers harmless. Professor Zixtol spoke up. I've been monitoring her daily activities. Yesterday, she consumed something called ghost pepper sauce with her lunch and described it as mild. The capsaicin concentration was high enough to cause chemical burns to any other species in the university. Dr. Windcaller's energy pattern flickered rapidly. So humans aren't just resistant to their native toxins. They've adapted to consume increasing levels of dangerous substances. That's our working theory, Dr. Morvek said. Earth didn't just produce dangerous life forms. Earth produced a species so resilient that they consider our most deadly substances to be recreational materials. The council members exchanged looks of horror and amazement. They were beginning to understand that humans weren't just another species joining the galactic community. They were apex predators who had evolved on a world so hostile that they had become virtually immune to everything the galaxy could throw at them. And somehow, they had developed into a peaceful, intelligent species who genuinely wanted to make friends with everyone they met. 3 months after Sarah Chun asked her innocent question in Professor Zixtal's classroom, the galaxy had changed forever. The Galactic Journal of Xenobiology published a special edition dedicated entirely to human biological resilience. The lead article, Homo sapiens, Accidental Apex Predators of the Galaxy, had been downloaded over 50 million times in the first week alone. Professor Zixtal stood in their newly expanded laboratory, surrounded by the most advanced biological research equipment the university could acquire. Their crystal skin glowed with pride as they watched news feeds from across the galaxy, showing the impact of their discoveries on Kepler 442. The High Council had declared humans a species of exceptional biological interest and allocated unprecedented funding for human studies. The Zelkari Federation had established new diplomatic protocols specifically for interacting with humans, including warnings that standard Zelkari pheromone communications might be ineffective on beings who regularly consume neurotoxins for fun. The Vorthok Assembly had gone even further, declaring Earth a restricted world and requiring special permits for any travel there. Their reasoning, as stated in official documents, was that Any planet capable of producing humans must be classified as a galactic biological hazard. But perhaps the most significant change was happening right at the university. The Human Studies Department had expanded from 0 faculty to 50 professors in 3 months. Researchers from across the galaxy were applying for positions to study the most resilient species ever discovered. Sarah Chun walked through the university's main corridor, still trying to adjust to her new reality. Students from dozens of species would stop her in the hallways, asking for autographs or requesting interviews. She had become famous across the galaxy simply for being a normal human who had answered questions about her childhood. The offers had started coming in immediately after Professor Zixtal's paper was published. The Galactic Institute of Biological Warfare wanted her to lead their new defensive research program. The Alliance Military Academy offered her a position developing training protocols for extreme environment operations. Even the Peaceful Sciences Collective wanted her to help design safety equipment that could protect researchers working in hazardous conditions. Sarah knocked on Professor Zixtal's office door, carrying a stack of research proposals that had arrived that morning. "Come in, Miss Chun," Professor Zixtal called. Their skin shifted to a warm blue color when they saw her. "More offers?" 17 today, Sarah said, setting the papers on the professor's desk. "The Hive Worlds want me to design atmospheric processors for hostile environments. Something called the Deep Space Mining Consortium wants to hire me as a safety consultant. And there's an offer from a place called the Extreme Tourism Corporation." Professor Zixtal picked up the last proposal, and their skin flashed warning colors. "Miss Chun, I would strongly advise against working with extreme tourism companies. They apparently want to market human-safe adventures to other species, not understanding that what is safe for humans would be instantly lethal to their customers." Sarah laughed. "I'm still trying to understand why everyone thinks we're so special. I mean, we're just people, right? We live normal lives on a normal planet. That," Professor Zixtal said, "is exactly what makes you so remarkable. You genuinely don't understand how extraordinary your species is." The professor activated a holographic display showing the latest research findings. "Miss Chun, we now know that humans are immune to toxins that will kill most known life forms. You can survive in atmospheric conditions that would be lethal to 60% of galactic species. Your immune systems can fight off pathogens that would cause system-wide infections in other beings." Sarah studied the display with interest. "But that's just how evolution works, isn't it? Species adapt to their environment. Earth has dangerous animals and plants, so humans learn to deal with them. Most species adapt by avoiding dangers," Professor Zixtal explained. "Humans adapted by becoming more dangerous than everything around them. Do you realize that your bite force is strong enough to cause serious injury to most galactic species? Your fingernails can tear through materials that some aliens use for protective armor." "Really?" Sarah looked at her hands with surprise. "I never thought about it that way." Professor Zixtal's communication device chimed with an urgent message. "Excuse me, Miss Chun. This is from the Galactic Council." The professor read the message, their skin shifting through several colors rapidly. "Miss Chun, the Council has officially reclassified Earth as a Class 10 death world. They're recommending that all future contact with humans include full biological protection protocols." "Does that mean other species won't be able to visit Earth?" Sarah asked, looking concerned. "Not visit, no. But they'll need life support systems that can protect them from your atmosphere, your water, your soil bacteria, and your wildlife. The Council has also established new guidelines for human travel to other worlds." Sarah's concern deepened. "Are they going to restrict where humans can go?" "Actually, the opposite," Professor Zixtal said, reading further. They're fast-tracking human applications for research positions in hazardous environments. It turns out there are thousands of research projects that have been stalled because no known species could survive the conditions. Humans can. Sarah's personal communicator buzzed with an incoming call from Earth. She looked at Professor Zixtel, who nodded permission. "Hi, Mom," Sarah said as her mother's face appeared in hologram. "Hi, sweetheart," her mother replied from the kitchen of their home in Sydney. "How's school going? Your brother wanted me to ask if you've seen any cool alien animals yet." Sarah glanced at Professor Zixtal, who was listening with fascination. "Actually, Mom, I'd become kind of famous here. It turns out aliens think humans are really unusual." "That's nice, dear," her mother said, stirring something in a pot. "Your father and I are proud of you for representing Earth well. Oh, your brother got stung by a blue bottle at the beach yesterday, but he's fine. Just put some ice on it." Professor Zixtal's skin turned bright red at this casual mention of another venomous encounter. "How's Grandpa Joe?" Sarah asked. "He's great," her mother said. "He's training a new group of volunteers for the wildlife rescue program. Last week, they had to relocate a whole nest of eastern brown snakes that had moved into someone's backyard. Joe says the new volunteers are getting better at handling the dangerous ones." Professor Zixtel made notes frantically as Sarah's mother continued chatting about family. News that included casual mentions of encounters with some of the most dangerous creatures known to science. "Anyway, I should let you get back to your studies," her mother said. "Your cousin Emma is getting married next month, and she wants you to be a bridesmaid if you can get home for it. The wedding's at a beach resort in Queensland, so pack some insect repellent. You know how the mosquitoes are up there." After the call ended, Professor Zixtel stared at Sarah in amazement. "Your family treats encounters with deadly creatures as casual conversation topics." "Well, they're just part of life," Sarah said. "You learn to deal with them." Professor Zixtel's communication device chimed again. This time, it was a message from Dr. Morvik requesting Sarah's presence at an emergency meeting with representatives from the Galactic Defense Council. "Miss Chun," Professor Zixtel said, "I believe you're about to become very important to galactic security. The Defense Council has realized that humans represent the ultimate biological weapon against hostile environments and dangerous alien life forms." Sarah looked confused. "But we're not weapons. We're just people who want to learn about the galaxy and make friends with other species." "That," Professor Zixtel said, "their skin glowing with wonder, is what makes you even more remarkable. You're a species of apex predators who evolved to be peaceful explorers. You could probably conquer half the galaxy without trying, but instead you want to study our art and share your food." As they walked toward the emergency meeting, Professor Zixtel reflected on how much had changed since that day in the classroom. Sarah's simple question had revealed that humans weren't just another species joining the galactic community. They were living proof that evolution could produce beings so resilient they could survive anything, yet so curious and kind they would rather make friends than enemies. The galaxy was still adjusting to the presence of humans, but Professor Zixtel was optimistic. Any species that could survive Earth's biological hazards while maintaining their sense of humor and desire to help others would be a powerful force for good in the universe. Sarah was already planning her next research project, completely unaware that she had become the most studied and admired being in galactic history. To her, she was just a graduate student who happened to grow up somewhere that other people found interesting. Professor Zixtal's skin shifted to the warm golden color their species displayed when contemplating the wonders of the universe. Humans, it seemed, were the most dangerous and most gentle species the galaxy had ever known. And somehow, that combination might be exactly what the universe needed.